How do you give 25 years to one company and still get treated like you never belonged there? Why did my stepbrothers act proud when they told me I was not real family, while they claimed $89 million and left me with nothing? What I found in my mom's storage unit later made my hands shake, and it changed what I thought I knew about my whole life. My name is Evan Cole. I am 49 years old. I have worked in construction since I was young. For most of my adult life, I worked for the company my stepfather built. People think construction is only loud voices and heavy machines. To me, it was always simple. It was planning, timing, trust, and keeping promises. For 25 years, my stepfather was the face. He shook hands and smiled for photos. He was good at that. I was the one who made sure the work happened. I ran schedules. I solved problems before clients even knew there was a problem. I trained crews. I handled bids. I knew which supplier would deliver at 6 in the morning and which one would show up late and blame traffic. I knew which subcontractor needed clear steps and which one needed space. I did not chase attention. I chased results. People outside the company assumed I was the son. People inside the company knew I was the one who kept things steady. Still, the family story was always the same. My stepfather was the builder. My stepbrothers were the future. I was the helper who should feel lucky to be included. In the last year, my stepfather was not able to run day-to-day work. His health took him away from the site and away from meetings. I did not talk about it much. I just took on more tasks because someone had to. He used to tell me I would be taken care of one day. He said I had earned my place. He said I was family in his eyes. He always said it in private, never in a room with witnesses. At the time, I thought that meant trust. Later, I saw it also meant he could change the story anytime he wanted. The morning after everything shifted, I went to the main site early. Dawn was still gray. The air smelled like wet soil and diesel. A generator hummed. The crews arrived in pairs, coffee in hand, talking low. When they saw me, they nodded. That nod meant more than words. It meant they were waiting for direction, and they believed I would give it. I walked the site the way I always did. I checked the delivery area. I looked at the rebar stacks. I glanced at the safety boards and the sign-in sheet. I spoke to Rosa Alvarez, our forewoman. Rosa had been on sites longer than some managers had been alive. She did not flatter people. She respected work. Rosa told me the concrete team had a question about timing. I said we would adjust the pour by half a day. I said we would not rush it and risk a mistake. I told her to keep the crew moving on interior prep while we waited. She nodded and left. That was normal. That was the job. That was the part of my life that made sense. Then a new truck rolled in. Clean and shiny. Not a work truck. Trent stepped out, my older stepbrother. He looked like he was going to a dinner, not a site. He wore clean boots with no dust on them. He carried a phone in his hand like it was a tool. He walked straight to the center of the site, not to the trailer, not to the safety board. He raised his phone and started talking into it. He said he was checking in on the team. He said the company was moving into a new chapter. He said he was proud to lead. His voice was loud enough for people nearby to hear. He did not ask me for an update. He did not ask Rosa what the crew needed. He looked past me like I was part of the background. One of the younger supervisors glanced at me, then looked away. The message was clear. They were watching to see how I would respond. I kept my face calm. I did not challenge Trent in front of everyone. A site is not a stage. It is a place where one wrong move can cost time and money. I did what I always did. I kept the work moving. Trent walked around for 10 minutes. He shook a few hands. He posed beside a piece of equipment like it was his. Then he left. As his truck rolled out, I saw a few crew members exchange looks. They were not amused, they were worried. They knew what happens when someone wants the title but does not understand the job. Around mid-morning, my phone rang. It was the front desk at headquarters. The receptionist sounded careful. She said there was a family meeting, and I was expected there right away. She said it like she was reading it from a note. I asked who said it. She said Kyle did. Kyle was my younger stepbrother. He was not loud like Trent. He was quiet, which made people assume he was reasonable. He used calm words to do sharp things. He did numbers and legal language. He liked rooms with clean tables, not dusty trailers. I told Rosa I had to step out. I said I would be back by late afternoon. I gave her the updated schedule and told her which vendor would call. Rosa looked at me for a second longer than usual. She asked if things were going to get messy. I told her I did not know, but I asked her to keep the crew steady. She said she would. Headquarters sat in a glass building with a lobby that smelled like air freshener and polished stone. For years, I walked in and out without thinking. That day, it felt different. The security guard at the desk was not one of ours. He asked for my name. He asked for my badge. He looked at his screen like he was checking if I belonged. I gave him my name and held my badge out. He took his time. He asked me to wait. He spoke quietly into a headset. A minute later, he handed my badge back. He said I could go up, but he told me to sign in. I had never signed in before. I wrote my name on the line like I was a visitor. I took the pen back to the cup. My hand did not shake. I did not raise my voice. I just noted it. Small actions tell the truth before big ones do. The elevator ride felt longer than usual. On the wall, there were framed photos of projects we built. I remembered the nights I stayed late fixing change orders. I remembered driving to sites at 5 a.m. to solve problems. I remembered meetings where I said no to risky shortcuts and protected the company from claims. Those photos were not only buildings, they were years of my life. When I stepped into the main floor, people looked up. Then they looked down. A few nodded in a small way. No one came over. The hallway was quiet, but not normal quiet. It was the kind of quiet people use when they do not want to be seen choosing a side. I walked to the conference room. The door was half open. Inside, Trent was leaning back in a chair like it was his living room. Kyle was sitting upright with a folder in front of him. There were two men in suits I did not recognize. One looked like a lawyer. The other looked like a banker. My stepfather's chair at the head of the table was empty. Trent started talking the moment I stepped in. He said they were glad I came. He said they needed to make roles clear. He said the company had to move forward with proper leadership. Kyle nodded as if he was agreeing with a business plan, not talking about a family. He said they had already met with advisors. He said they were cleaning up responsibilities. He said it was time to be professional. I sat down without asking permission. I placed my hands flat on the table and looked at them. I asked what this was about. Kyle said it was about ownership and family boundaries. Trent said it was about reality. Then Trent said the line that made the room feel colder. He said I was not real family. He said it like it was obvious. He said it like he was stating a rule from a handbook. He said my years in the company were appreciated, but that did not make me equal. He said I had a place, but not that place. Kyle added more. He said the business was always meant for the true sons. He said I was paid well over the years. He said the company did not owe me anything beyond what I already got. I asked what they meant by paid well. I asked if they remembered how many weekends I worked without extra pay. I asked if they remembered the years I took smaller raises because the company needed cash flow. I asked if they remembered the projects I saved when others wanted to walk away. Kyle said those were choices I made. He said I was an employee, and employees make choices. Trent said I should not act surprised now. He said I should accept it with dignity. One of the suit men looked uncomfortable. He kept his eyes on the table. The other took notes like he had seen these rooms before. I noticed small details. Kyle's folder had tabs. Trent had no papers at all. That told me who prepared and who performed. I asked if there would be a role for me going forward. Trent said there would be work if I wanted it. He said I could stay in operations for a while, but under new direction. Kyle said they would review my access and my authority. He said they needed to control the message to clients and vendors. I understood what that meant. They were not only removing me from the family story, they were preparing to remove me from the business systems that I built. I did not argue. I did not beg. I did not try to win their hearts. I had done that quietly for years, with work and loyalty, and it did not change how they saw me. I told them I heard them. I told them I understood they wanted clear lines. I said I would not cause a scene. I said I wanted everything handled properly. Trent looked satisfied. Kyle looked relieved. They expected anger, and my calm made them think I was defeated. That is what people often assume. They think calm means weak. They think silence means agreement. Before I stood up, I looked around the room. I saw the empty chair at the head of the table. I saw the framed photo of a project I ran from start to finish. I saw the way the staff outside the glass wall avoided looking in. I stood and thanked them for their time. I said I would go back to the site and keep the day moving. Kyle said someone would contact me about next steps. Trent said I should remember to be grateful for the years I had. I walked out without rushing. In the hallway, my shoes sounded loud on the polished floor. I passed the front desk, and the receptionist gave me a look that was both apology and fear. She did not say anything, but her eyes told me she had been instructed. When I reached the lobby, the security guard watched me again. This time he did not look away. He was waiting for a signal from someone else. I walked past him anyway. Outside, the air felt more honest. It was colder, but it was real. In my truck, I sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel. I did not cry. I did not shout. I just stared at the windshield and let the facts settle. I had given them my strongest years. I had built something that carried their name. And in one meeting, they reduced me to a worker who should feel lucky. I started the engine and drove back toward the site. As I drove, my mind did what it always does when something breaks. It started arranging details into order: dates, conversations, promises made in private, people who witnessed certain moments, access changes, what was said, and who said it. I knew one thing for sure. They believed the story was finished. They believed I would accept the role they assigned me. They believed I would stay quiet because it was easier. I kept my eyes on the road and my voice steady inside my head. I told myself I would not fight like them. I would not chase their approval. If I was going to respond, I would respond in the only way that works with people like that. I would respond through the systems they respected. The drive back to the site gave me too much time to remember. When a person is calm on the outside, it does not mean he feels nothing. It means he is keeping the noise inside his own head. That day, I kept thinking about how long this had been building and how I kept ignoring it because I wanted the company to stay stable. I met Gordon when I was in my early 20s. My mother, Marla, had been raising me alone for a long time. She worked hard, and she did not complain much. When she met Gordon, she looked lighter for the first time in years. Gordon was already doing well in construction. He had a small office, 2 work trucks, and a crew that followed him because he paid on time. He treated my mother with respect in front of others, and that mattered to me. Gordon told me I could join the company if I wanted. He said I could learn the trade and build a real career. I took that offer because I wanted to be useful. I also wanted to protect my mother. I thought if I became part of Gordon's world, I could keep my mother safe inside it. I did not understand yet how people can accept your work but still keep you outside their circle. In the beginning, I was just a worker. I carried materials, I cleaned up job sites. I learned the names of tools and the rules of safety. Gordon liked that I showed up early and stayed late without being asked. He praised me in small ways. He said I had a steady mind. He said I did not panic when problems came. Those words meant a lot to me then. Trent and Kyle were already in the picture. Trent was the one who liked to be seen. He liked nice clothes and new trucks. He talked like he was always in charge, even when he did not know what was happening. Kyle was different. He stayed quiet, watched people, and waited for the right time to speak. He did not need attention from a crowd. He wanted control in a room with a closed door. At family events, I was useful. If a sink leaked, I fixed it. If a fence needed repair, I fixed it. If someone's car would not start, I helped. Gordon would smile and say I was a good man. My mother would look proud. Trent and Kyle would say thank you, but their eyes would say something else. They acted like my help was normal, like it was my job to be the person who solves problems for them. I remember one summer cookout behind Gordon's house. Trent talked about the company like he built it himself. He told friends he was going to expand the business soon. I stood by the grill, listening, while I flipped burgers. Someone asked what I did in the company. Trent said I handled the dirty side of things. He said he and Kyle handled the future. Gordon laughed softly and did not correct him. I told myself it was just talk. I told myself it did not matter. But I still remember that moment clearly. Work became my main life. I moved from labor into supervision, then into operations. It was not because Gordon planned it that way. It was because problems kept landing on my desk, and I kept solving them. I learned scheduling, I learned estimating, I learned to speak to inspectors and project managers. I learned how to keep a client calm when delays happened. I learned which words help and which words make a situation worse. There was a large project about 15 years ago that almost collapsed. A subcontractor did not show up, and the schedule was falling apart. Gordon was out of town. Trent was busy and did not answer calls. Kyle said we should wait and see what happens. I did not wait. I called 3 other subcontractors and found one who could step in. I rearranged the schedule and convinced the client to approve a small shift without panic. That project finished, and the company's reputation grew because of it. When the final walkthrough happened, Gordon shook hands and took praise. He later told me privately that I saved the job. He said I was the backbone of the company. He said he would never forget that. Then, a week later, at a family dinner, Trent told people Gordon had taught him everything about handling big projects. Gordon did not correct that either. Those patterns kept repeating. I did the work, and the family name took the credit. At first, I accepted it because I thought it was the price of belonging. I told myself I was building something that would one day support all of us, including my mother. Gordon fed that belief with small promises. He would say that I would be taken care of later. He would say I was family in his heart. He would say I did not need to worry about titles because I had trust. The problem with private promises is that they disappear when the room changes. I learned that slowly. I learned it when Trent started calling me by my first name like he was my manager. I learned it when Kyle began asking me for reports and acting like I was lucky to be included. I learned it when people in the office began copying Trent and Kyle's tone. It was a quiet shift, like a door closing without a slam. My mother saw pieces of it, but she wanted peace more than truth. When I tried to talk to her about it, she would say Gordon was stressed. She would say Trent and Kyle were still learning. She would say families are complicated. She would ask me to be patient because she did not want fighting in the home. I could see fear behind her words. She had waited a long time for stability. She did not want to risk it. As years passed, Gordon became more careful about how he spoke around others. He could be warm and kind, but he also liked being in control. He liked being the center of the story. He liked having sons who made him look strong. When I achieved something, he praised me privately, but he still kept the public spotlight for Trent and Kyle. I began to notice that he enjoyed their confidence, even when it was not earned. Then Gordon's health began to limit him. He was not able to travel to sites as much. He stopped attending some meetings. His energy changed. In those months, I became the main point of contact for almost everything. Clients called me, vendors called me, city inspectors called me, crew leaders called me. I kept it running because stopping was not an option. That was also when Trent and Kyle started showing up more. They were suddenly present in the office. They asked more questions. They talked about legacy and family ownership. They started using phrases like real sons. In soft ways, not directly at first. I heard it in side comments. I heard it in the way they introduced me to new people. They would call me the operations guy, not Gordon's son, not even Gordon's stepson. Just staff. One afternoon, about 6 months before the meeting where they erased me, we had a client lunch at a simple restaurant near the highway. The client was a developer who cared about timelines and budgets. Gordon was supposed to attend, but did not come. Trent arrived late and acted like the room belonged to him. He spoke in broad statements about growth and leadership. When the client asked about schedule risk, Trent looked at me and waited. I answered calmly and clearly. I explained the steps. I explained the delivery windows. I explained how we would manage weather delays. The client nodded and said he felt confident. Trent smiled like he had planned it. After the lunch, Trent told me I had done well for an employee. I said I understood. I did not argue. But I noted the words. Kyle's approach was different. He would praise me in a careful way, then ask me to give up control in small pieces. He asked for passwords. He asked for vendor lists. He asked for client contact history. He said it was normal for transition planning. He said it would protect the company if anything happened. I told myself he was being responsible, but I also noticed he did not share anything back. Information flowed one way, like a slow drain. Rosa noticed it too. She told me the crews were hearing rumors that the company was changing hands. She said some workers were afraid of new management because they had seen those types before. She said people who do not know the work often push too hard and break things. I told her to focus on the job and keep everyone steady. I said we would handle changes when they come. That was true, but I did not realize how fast the change would hit. The day I got erased in the conference room was not a sudden storm. It was the final step of a long plan. They had been practicing the story for years. I was the useful worker. They were the heirs. Gordon let that story grow because it made his house calm and his image strong. He did not think about what it would do to me, or he did and chose comfort anyway. On the site that afternoon, I tried to act normal. I walked the perimeter. I checked the materials. I asked the concrete team if they had what they needed. I updated a supervisor about an inspection time. But every time someone called me boss, I felt a strange weight. I knew the office was trying to make that word stop applying to me. I knew they wanted to cut my authority while still using my skills. Near the end of the day, I went into the trailer and looked at the whiteboard schedule. My handwriting was on most of it. Dates, names, deliveries, inspections. It was proof of the life I lived, but not the kind of proof the family respected. They respected paper and signatures. They respected titles. They respected control. Rosa stepped into the trailer and asked me, plain and direct, what happened at headquarters. I told her the truth without drama. I said Trent and Kyle told me I was not real family and they were taking over. Rosa did not gasp. She did not look shocked. She only nodded slowly, like she had expected it. She told me the crew trusted me, not them. She said I had earned that trust with action, not words. She also warned me that trust does not pay bills if the office locks you out. She told me to be careful and to protect myself. I thanked her and told her I would. When I drove home that night, I did not feel anger. I felt a clear, cold understanding. If I kept acting like loyalty would earn respect, I would lose everything. If I wanted fairness, I could not ask for it in the language of feelings. I would have to speak in the language of systems, timelines, and proof. That was the only language Trent and Kyle truly believed in, even if they pretended it was about family. The next business day started with a simple test I did not expect to fail. I drove to the supply yard before sunrise because that is where the real day begins. Materials, equipment, fuel cards, and keys all move through that gate. For years, my code worked every time. I knew the guard by name. I knew which vendor trucks came early and which ones arrived late. I could tell what kind of day it would be just by the line of brake lights outside the yard. I pulled up, typed my code, and waited for the gate to slide open. Nothing happened. I tried again, slower. The keypad beeped, but the gate stayed still. The guard stepped out of the booth. He was not one of ours. He did not look nervous. He looked trained. He asked for my name and told me to wait near the line. He said he needed to confirm something. The way he said it made it feel like I was asking to enter a place I had never been. I told him my name, my role, and that I needed to check on a delivery schedule. He looked at a screen and shook his head once. He said my access was not active. He said he could not let me in. I asked who turned it off. He said he did not know, but he had clear instructions. I asked if a manager was on site. He said someone would call me. I stood there in the cold air while trucks behind me waited. Drivers leaned out of windows, impatient. A few recognized me and gave me that look people give when they think something is wrong but do not want to ask. I felt the pressure of being watched from all sides. I did not argue with the guard. I did not make it a scene in front of vendors. I stepped to the side and called the office. No one answered my first call. My second call went to a general mailbox. I called Kyle directly. He did not pick up. I called Trent. He did not pick up either. After a few minutes, my phone buzzed with a message from an office administrator. She said the yard was under updated access rules and I should wait for direction. She said the company was reorganizing and they needed to keep things consistent. Her words were polite, but the meaning was sharp. They were cutting me off from the daily controls while still expecting me to keep outcomes stable. While I waited, a yard supervisor I had worked with for years walked over. He looked uncomfortable. He said he heard that my role had changed. He said he was told not to release equipment based on my requests anymore. He said it quietly, like he was ashamed. I told him I understood and that he should follow whatever instructions he was given. I did not blame him. People protect their paychecks. He asked if I was leaving. I told him I was still figuring out what was happening. He nodded and went back inside the gate, leaving me outside like a visitor. That moment was the line for me. Not because I needed a gate to feel important, but because the gate was a symbol. The yard was where I prevented delays before they became problems. It was where I solved small issues that saved big money later. Cutting my access was not about security, it was about control and humiliation. They wanted me to feel small, so I would accept whatever role they offered next. I drove straight to headquarters. I did not rush. I parked, walked in, and went to the front desk. The receptionist looked at me with tight eyes. She told me Kyle was busy. She said I could leave a message. I asked her to tell Kyle I needed to confirm my access and authority, since I was still running active projects. She nodded and made a call. While she spoke, I looked around the lobby. There were new framed photos on the wall, and Trent was in more of them than before. I saw his smile beside equipment, beside clients, beside signage. I did not remember him being present on those days. I remembered who was present, I remembered who stayed late and fixed issues. But photos do not show sweat or spreadsheets. Photos show faces, and Trent understood that better than anyone. The receptionist came back and said Kyle would not meet me today. She said I should send my questions by email. She said it like it was a standard procedure, like I was a vendor asking for an update. I thanked her and walked back out. The security guard watched me again, and I noted his posture. He was not there to greet people. He was there to enforce a decision. In my truck, I wrote down the date and time. I wrote down what happened at the gate. I wrote down the message from the administrator. I wrote down the receptionist's words. I did not do it because I wanted to create drama. I did it because I had learned something important. If a person wants to erase you, the first step is making your experience feel like a personal misunderstanding. The second step is making everyone else treat it like normal. I went to the county records office next. It was a plain building with hard chairs and quiet lines. I took a number and waited. There were people there for property questions, permits, and business filings. No one cared who I was. That was part of why I went. I needed a place where the rules were written and the process was the same for everyone. When my number was called, I asked for public business records connected to the company. I asked for basic filings and ownership history that the public can request. I did not argue with the clerk. I did not demand special treatment. I filled out the request forms and paid the fee. The clerk told me when I could pick up the copies. I thanked her and stepped aside. Sitting on a bench outside, I looked at my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Client names, vendor names, inspector names, crew leads, project managers. I realized Kyle had been asking for this kind of information for months. He did not want to learn the work. He wanted to take the map from the person who built it. I backed up my contacts to a secure account and wrote a list of key people who might be pressured to change their communication. I also went through my calendar. I looked at past meetings, site visits, bid deadlines, inspection dates. I began building a clean timeline, not with emotions, but with facts. Who requested what? Who approved what? Who was present? I listed projects I had personally delivered and the names of clients who could confirm it. I saved the proof in a folder on my computer at home, not shared with company systems. I kept it simple and organized, like I was preparing for an audit. That evening, I returned to my rental and sat at my kitchen table. It was a small place with plain cabinets and a second-hand chair that squeaked if I leaned back. I made a basic dinner and ate slowly. The day had been long, but the clarity was growing. I was not dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with a plan. After dinner, I opened a notebook and wrote 2 lists. The first list was what I controlled directly: my knowledge of schedules, my relationships with crews, my credibility with long-term clients, my ability to fix problems quickly. The second list was what the stepbrothers controlled: titles, access permissions, messaging in the office, appearances in public, money in the short term. Then I wrote a third list, and that one mattered most. I wrote down what the systems required, regardless of family stories. Which roles needed proper authority for certain permits, which responsibilities were tied to specific certifications, which obligations existed with lenders and insurers, which projects had compliance requirements that could not be handled by a person who only held a title. I did not write the details on paper in a way that could be taken from me. I wrote reminders for myself, just enough to guide my next steps. My phone rang while I was writing. It was a number I did not have saved. I answered with my usual calm voice. A man introduced himself as an accountant who had worked with the company for a long time. I recognized the name after a moment. He had been around during big years, the years when we expanded and took on larger contracts. He spoke carefully and said he wanted to check on me. He told me he heard there was a sudden transition and that my name had been removed from some internal communication. He said that was unusual. He said he had questions he could not ask the stepbrothers directly because they were not giving clear answers. He said he did not want to step out of line, but he also did not want to watch a preventable mess unfold. I thanked him for calling and told him I appreciated his honesty. I asked what exactly changed. He did not give me details over the phone. He only said there were signs of rushed decisions and that it could affect more than feelings. He said there were arrangements made over many years, and those arrangements had a structure. He said people who did not understand the structure could cause serious consequences without realizing it. I asked him if he could meet me for coffee in a neutral place. He agreed and suggested a diner off the highway where he often stopped between appointments. He said he would be there the next morning. He asked me to bring nothing that belonged to the company. He said he wanted the conversation to be clean and professional. After I hung up, I sat still for a moment. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of my refrigerator. I did not feel excited. I felt focused. People like Trent and Kyle relied on the idea that I had no support and no leverage. They believed the story they told themselves. They thought I was a worker who would accept a smaller role because he had nowhere else to go. But the accountant's call reminded me of something I had been ignoring. Systems are built on rules, not smiles. Large businesses depend on processes that do not bend just because someone says they are in charge now. The stepbrothers could play family politics, but they still had to face banks, insurers, regulators, and clients. Those institutions do not care who is a real son in a family story. They care about who carries responsibility and how risk is managed. I cleaned the table, put the notebook away, and checked my phone one more time. I had 2 new messages from the office. One was a short reminder about an upcoming project meeting. The other was a notice that my company email settings were being updated. It was written in polite language, but it was another small door closing. I did not reply with anger. I did not send a long message. I simply saved both messages to my personal records and wrote down the time they arrived. Then I set my phone face down and turned off the kitchen light. Lying in bed, I thought about the men in that conference room. Trent enjoyed humiliation because it made him feel strong. Kyle enjoyed control because it made him feel safe. They believed I would respond emotionally so they could paint me as unstable. I was not going to give them that. I fell asleep with one simple plan in my mind. I would keep gathering facts. I would keep my tone steady. I would not threaten anyone. I would not beg for a place at their table. I would move the way the systems move, step by step, and I would let the truth do the heavy work. The next morning I met the accountant at the diner off the highway. It was the kind of place with worn booths, steady coffee, and people who do not ask personal questions. That helped. I did not want pity. I wanted clarity. He arrived on time and sat across from me. He looked tired in a careful way, like someone who carries other people's problems for a living. He said he had worked with our company in different phases. He said he was not picking sides, but he had seen transitions go wrong when people moved too fast. He told me the stepbrothers were asking for changes that did not match the company's usual rhythm. He said they wanted quick updates to accounts, approvals, and reporting lines. He said they spoke as if titles alone were enough. He also said several outside partners were already nervous, because the stepbrothers did not answer basic questions in a clear way. I asked him what he meant by outside partners. He said there were lenders, insurers, and vendor programs that depend on stable management. He said those partners look for specific signals, like consistent sign-offs, clean responsibility chains, and proof that risk is managed. He told me that if those signals disappear, partners do not wait for feelings to settle, they act to protect themselves. I listened and took notes in my head. I did not ask him to hand me anything. I did not ask him to break trust. I only asked for the kind of information any professional can share without crossing lines. I asked what questions partners usually ask when they sense trouble. He explained those questions in general terms. He also told me something else that mattered. He said the stepbrothers were pushing a story inside the office. They were telling staff that I had already agreed to step back. They were telling vendors that I was no longer a decision maker. They were framing it as cleaning up and moving forward. That meant my calm response in the conference room was being used against me. I told him I understood. I told him I had not agreed to step back from my responsibilities on active projects. I said I was still the person who knew the operational facts. He nodded and said he believed that. He said he had seen who does the real work over the years. He said the company's reputation was not built on speeches. Before we left, he advised me to speak to a lawyer who understands business transitions. He said that when families mix with companies, the story can get messy fast. He said it is better to keep things procedural. I thanked him and paid for the coffee. It was a small action, but it helped me feel grounded. I was not asking anyone to rescue me. I was moving step by step. On the way home, I stopped at a local bank branch. I did not go to complain. I went to observe. In business, money leaves footprints, even when people try to hide the path. I asked to speak with a manager. I said I had worked in operations for a long time, and I needed to understand what a transition can affect. The manager was polite and careful. He did not confirm anything specific. He spoke in general terms about how banks look at authority, documentation, and continuity. He said that when a company changes leadership, the bank updates internal risk notes. He said that some actions can trigger reviews, even if the company is still working. I asked him what kind of actions. He said sudden changes in signers, unusual transfers, and unclear reporting lines can raise questions. He also said that banks do not like surprises, especially in industries with tight timelines and large payments. I thanked him for explaining the process. I did not push for details. I only needed to know the shape of the system. Once you know the shape, you can move through it without panic. After the bank, I went home and opened my laptop. I looked at my saved contacts again. I backed up my calendar. I organized my notes into simple folders with dates. I made a clean list of active projects and who the client contact was. I also wrote down the names of the people who had been in the conference room when Trent and Kyle erased me. Not because I wanted revenge in a loud way, but because witnesses matter when stories change. I did not have an income anymore that I could count on. The company was still sending short messages, but nothing was clear. I needed to pay rent and keep food in the house. I did not want to take money from my mother. She had already carried enough weight for years. A friend of a friend connected me to a small cleaning service. They needed someone reliable for move-out cleans and simple housework. It was not glamorous, but it was honest. I took the work without telling many people. I did not want gossip. I also did not want to sit still and let my mind spin. The first house I cleaned was in a wealthy suburb. The rooms were large and quiet. The floors were smooth. The kitchen had expensive appliances that looked like they were never used. I moved through the work in the same way I moved through construction tasks. One step at a time, checklist, focus, finish. Cleaning houses taught me something I did not expect. People talk when they think workers are invisible. They speak freely on phone calls, they mention names, they mention plans. I did not eavesdrop on purpose, but words drift in the air. I heard a man on a call saying he was happy the construction company had new leadership. He said the new leaders were easier to influence. He said the old operations person was too strict. I did not react. I kept wiping a counter and let the information settle. It told me the stepbrothers were selling a story outside the company too. They were not only erasing me, they were replacing me with an image that suited certain people. After a few cleaning jobs, I had enough money to breathe for a week. That breathing room helped me think clearly. I scheduled a meeting with Attorney Patel. The accountant had given me her name. He said she was direct and not easily impressed. That was what I needed. Her office was simple and quiet. No flashy art, no loud branding, just clean shelves, a desk, and a small meeting table. She greeted me with a calm face and asked me to explain the situation in order. I told her the facts without dramatic language. I said I had worked for the company for 25 years. I said I ran operations and protected the company's reputation. I said my stepbrothers called me into a meeting and said I was not real family. I said they removed my access and started telling people I stepped back. She asked questions in a steady way. She asked about my pay history, my role descriptions, my responsibilities, and any promises made. She asked if anything was ever written down. I told her that many things were said privately, but my work outputs were visible in project records and client relationships. I told her I had notes, dates, and witnesses. She told me to keep my tone calm in all communication. She said I should not argue on the phone. She said I should not send emotional messages. She said the goal is not to win a fight at a kitchen table. The goal is to protect rights inside systems that follow rules. She also told me to stop meeting any family members alone to discuss business. She said private conversations turn into false stories very fast. I asked her what I should do next. She did not give me a dramatic answer. She gave me a procedural one. She told me to keep building a clean timeline. She told me to keep copies of all messages I receive. She told me to list the people who can confirm my role. She told me to request public records that show how the company is structured. She told me to keep my personal finances stable so I do not make desperate choices. I left her office feeling lighter, not because I had a secret weapon, but because I had a method. A method is what calm people use when others rely on chaos. Over the next week, I continued cleaning houses during the day and organizing my notes at night. I also returned to the county office to pick up the public records I requested. I did not open them in the hallway. I took them home and placed them in a folder. I did not want anyone to see me carrying papers and start guessing. I did not show anything to anyone. I only wanted to know what I was dealing with. I noticed something else during that week. Staff members from the office stopped responding to my messages unless they had to. When they did respond, they used very formal wording. That kind of wording usually means someone told them to protect themselves. I did not blame them. The stepbrothers were controlling the building, the payroll, and the daily pressure. Rosa called me once in the evening. She said the site was still moving, but people were worried. She said Trent showed up again, talking loud about growth and new rules. She said Kyle had been calling the trailer asking for reports, but he did not understand the report details when she tried to explain them. She said a few subcontractors were asking if the company was still stable because payments were starting to slow down. I told Rosa to keep focusing on safety and process. I told her not to argue with Trent. I told her to document what she can in normal workways like daily logs and checklists. I did not ask her to risk her job. I only asked her to keep doing good work and to protect the crew. A few days later, my mother asked me to come over. Her voice sounded tense. When I arrived, Trent was already there. He sat on her couch like he owned the room. Kyle was not there, but his presence was still felt. Trent smiled and spoke softly, like he was trying to look generous. He told me I did not need to make things hard. He said the stepbrothers respected my years of help. He said there could be a place for me if I stayed loyal. He also said the company needed one clear family story in public, and I did not fit that story. I kept my face neutral. I told him I was not trying to make anything hard. I told him I wanted things handled properly. I told him I would not argue in my mother's living room. He tried to push me into reacting. He hinted that I would not find work like this again. He hinted that people would forget me fast. I did not take the bait. I said I understood his view. I told him I was focusing on my own stability right now. I told him I would communicate through proper channels. Trent's smile tightened for a moment. He wanted me to beg or rage. My calm did not feed him. After Trent left, my mother looked torn. She asked me if I was going to fight them. I told her I was not fighting with shouting. I told her I was going to do things the right way. I told her I did not want her caught in the middle. She nodded, but I could see fear in her eyes. She was afraid of losing the life she had built with Gordon. She was also afraid of seeing her son treated like he did not matter. That night, I returned to my rental and checked my email on my personal account. I saw an invitation to the Builders Association banquet. The company was being honored for a large community project. Trent's name was on the host line. The message said there would be a special announcement in a private room before the main dinner. I read the invitation twice. I did not smile. I did not panic. I only noted the timing and the setting. People like Trent love rooms full of applause. People like Kyle love private rooms where signatures happen quietly. I placed the invitation into my folder and turned off my laptop. Then I wrote one more line in my timeline. The stage was being prepared, and they were confident enough to do it in public. My days had become smaller in a way that felt strange. I went from running crews and solving big problems to cleaning houses and counting my grocery money. I did not say that for pity, it was just the truth. I had learned that pride does not pay rent. Also, panic does not fix anything. So I stayed steady and did what was in front of me. The invitation to the Builders Association banquet sat in my folder like a weight. It was written like a celebration. It used words like community, growth, and legacy. It listed Trent as the host and face of the company. It also mentioned a private room before the main dinner for a special moment with partners. That part mattered more than the dinner. Kyle did not enjoy crowds. He enjoyed closed doors. I kept working my cleaning jobs during the day. At night, I kept building my timeline. I kept all messages in one place. I wrote dates and short notes, nothing emotional. I also followed Attorney Patel's advice. I stopped speaking to Trent or Kyle by phone. I did not meet them alone. If they contacted me, I kept my replies short and polite, and I saved everything. A few days after the invitation arrived, Kyle finally emailed me. He wrote in a formal tone and said the company had updated roles. He said I should direct all questions through a new operations manager. He thanked me for my service, like I was leaving the military or retiring. He also said I was not authorized to contact vendors or clients on behalf of the company anymore. I read his email twice. The words were calm, but the intention was clear. He wanted to cut my voice out of every important channel. He wanted me to become invisible. He also wanted to push me into a mistake. If I reacted loudly, he could point and say I was unstable. If I contacted a client, he could accuse me of interference. He was building a fence around me and hoping I would run into it. I forwarded the message to my personal account and added it to my folder. Then I did something that felt simple but mattered. I wrote a list of every active project that was at risk if the wrong person made a decision. I wrote the key dates, inspections, concrete pours, delivery windows, permit deadlines. I did not send it to anyone. I kept it for myself, because it helped me see the full shape of what they were playing with. Rosa called me again that week. She sounded tired. She said Trent had been walking the site with a new man in a clean vest, calling him the new operations lead. She said the man did not know where the site plans were kept. She said he asked basic questions like he had never run a project before. Rosa also said a supplier had called the trailer asking why a payment was late. That was not normal for us. We had always paid on time, because that is how you keep good people loyal. I told Rosa to keep her daily logs clean and simple. I told her not to argue with anyone. I told her to focus on safety and process. I could hear her breathing on the line, like she was holding back words. She said she hated watching it happen. She said she knew I was the one who kept the company stable. I thanked her and told her her work mattered more than she realized. 2 nights later, my mother asked me to come over again. She sounded nervous. When I arrived, her living room felt tight, like the air was heavy. She had folded blankets and cleaned the coffee table like she was trying to control something. She told me Trent had been visiting her more. She said he kept talking about family unity. She said he kept warning her that I might cause trouble. I sat down and told her I was not trying to harm her. I said I was going to handle things properly and quietly. I said I did not want her caught between anyone. She looked at my face like she was trying to read what I was not saying. Then she stood and walked to a hallway closet. She pulled out a small ring of keys. She held them in her palm like they were heavier than they should be. She said one key was for a storage unit she kept for years. She said she never told anyone because it was just old boxes and memories. She said after Gordon was gone, she could not bring herself to sort through it. She said she thought maybe I should be the one to decide what to do with it. I asked her why she kept it a secret. She said it was not a secret at first. It just became something she avoided. She said Gordon did not like clutter, and she did not want him asking questions about old parts of her life. She said she also did not want Trent and Kyle making jokes about it. Her voice got quiet when she said that. It told me more than a long explanation could. The next morning I drove to the storage facility. The building was long and plain, with rows of metal doors under bright lights. The manager at the desk checked my mother's name and asked for my identification. His tone was neutral. He did not care about family stories. He cared about rules and signatures. He walked me down a hallway that smelled like dust and cold air. He pointed to a unit and said this was the one. He reminded me about the lock policy. Then he left me alone. I stood in front of the door for a moment. I did not expect treasure. I expected old blankets, boxes of photos, maybe broken furniture. I unlocked it and rolled the door up. The air inside was stale. I coughed once and stepped in. There were stacked boxes, most of them labeled in my mother's handwriting. Winter clothes, kitchen items, old books, a box labeled school, another labeled papers. That last one made me pause. Papers can mean anything: bills, letters, old forms, things people do not want to look at. I moved boxes carefully and made a small path. I did not want to spill anything. In the back, I found a plastic bin taped shut. The tape was old and yellow. I carried it into the light and opened it slowly. Inside were envelopes and folders. Some were my mother's, some were mine from childhood. I saw a few photos. I saw a small bracelet from when I was a baby, the kind hospitals sometimes use. I saw a folded document in a thin, protective sleeve. I did not pull it out right away. I sat on the concrete floor and just looked at it. For a few seconds, I felt like I was touching a part of my life I had never been allowed to see. Then I took it out and unfolded it. It was an official paper about my birth. I recognized the layout, the stamps, the way it was structured. I had seen enough forms in construction and business to know what official looks like. My name was there. My mother's name was there. The date was there. Then there was the father line. The name on that line was not the name I grew up hearing. It was not Gordon's name. It was not any name that fit our family story. It was a name I did not recognize at all. I did not feel anger in that moment. I felt a quiet shift, like a heavy door moving in my mind. My mother had told me my whole life that my father left early and that Gordon stepped in and raised me like his own. I never pushed her for details. I thought she was protecting me from pain. Now I realized there was another possibility. She might have been protecting herself or protecting someone else. I packed the bin back the way I found it. I did not take everything. I only took the sleeve with the official paper and a small folder that looked connected. I locked the unit and returned the key to my pocket. On the drive back, my hand stayed steady on the wheel, but my thoughts moved fast. I kept returning to one detail. If my mother kept this for decades, it was not random. People do not keep papers like that without a reason. They keep them because they are afraid, or because they are waiting, or because they do not know what to do with the truth. When I arrived at my mother's house, she was in the kitchen. She looked up and saw my face. She asked me what I found. I did not accuse her. I did not raise my voice. I placed the protective sleeve on the table and said I found an official paper that raised questions. Her shoulders dropped like she had been carrying a bag for years, and someone finally told her she could set it down. She did not deny it. She did not pretend she was confused. She sat in her chair and stared at her hands. She said she never meant to hurt me. She said she was young and scared when I was born. She said the truth would have caused problems back then. She said Gordon gave her stability and she did not want to lose it. She said that over time, the story became easier than the reality. I asked her why she never told me when I was older. She said she tried many times. She said every time she started, she saw my face and she stopped. She said she was afraid I would leave her. She said she was afraid I would look at her differently. Then she said something that made me go still. She said the name on that paper was not just any name. She said it was connected to money and power, and she feared what would happen if the wrong people found out. She said she thought keeping quiet was the safest choice. She said she did not expect Trent and Kyle to erase me so completely. She said she never imagined I would end up struggling for basic things after giving so much. I listened and kept my voice level. I told her I was not going to act out of emotion. I told her I would handle this through proper channels. I said I would not storm into rooms and demand answers. I said I would go step by step like I do at work. She nodded, but tears formed in her eyes. She looked relieved and terrified at the same time. That evening I went back to my rental. I placed the sleeve on my table and stared at it for a long time. The banquet invitation sat next to it. 2 worlds on one small table. One was about public image and applause. The other was about identity and truth. I called Attorney Patel and asked for a short meeting. I did not explain everything on the phone. I only said I found something important from my early life, and I needed guidance on how to proceed in a clean, lawful way. She agreed to meet the next day. When I met her, I spoke carefully. I told her I discovered an official record that raised questions about my family background. I told her it might connect to someone with public standing. I told her I did not want to make assumptions. I wanted a proper process. She reminded me to keep things quiet until the right moment. She said the worst thing I could do was act on partial information. She said people with power often rely on confusion. She said clear steps protect you. She also said the timing of the banquet mattered because it looked like the stepbrothers planned to lock in support from partners in a public way. I left her office and felt the path narrowing into one direction, not a wild plan, not a dramatic speech, just a sequence of steps that would put truth in the right hands at the right time, in the right room. Back at home, I prepared for the banquet like it was a job site visit. I checked the address, I checked the time, I picked simple clothes that fit, I charged my phone, I wrote down key names from the invitation, I ate a small meal and drank water because I knew I would not think well if I let nerves run my body. Before I went to sleep, I looked once more at the name on the paper. Then I opened my laptop and typed that name into a search bar. I did not click on random results. I only wanted to see what the world claimed that name belonged to. I sat back in my chair and watched the screen load, telling myself one more time to stay calm and let the systems do their work. I drove to the Builders Association banquet in a plain shirt and clean shoes. I arrived early and stayed near the edge of the ballroom. Trent moved through the crowd with a wide smile, shaking hands like he owned the room. He kept pointing at the company banner and speaking about legacy and growth. People laughed and nodded, because that is what people do when they want to stay close to power. Kyle did not stay in the main room. He guided a small group of partners toward a private side conference room. I recognized a bank representative, an insurance broker, and 2 senior vendors. I also noticed one association staff member holding a clipboard, watching who went in. Attorney Patel arrived a minute later. She carried a simple folder and walked like she belonged there. She greeted me briefly and told me to let the process work. Inside the private room, Kyle tried to take control. He said the company was stable and ready for the next phase. He said the partners were there to witness a clean transition. Trent was not in the room yet because he was still feeding the crowd outside. Attorney Patel opened the folder and laid out the reality in plain steps. She showed written agreements tied to my role over the years, including deferred compensation and operational authority that was never meant to be switched off with a keypad. She showed how active project responsibility had been assigned and how removing me without proper procedure created immediate compliance risk. Then she showed the section that mattered to the partners most. The company's lending and insurance terms depended on specific qualifications and sign-off chains that were linked to me, not to Trent's speeches. The bank representative asked short questions. Patel answered with dates, references, and clear language. The insurance broker's face changed when he understood the exposure. Kyle tried to interrupt, but every time he spoke, someone asked him for a document he did not have. Then it was my turn. I placed my birth record on the table and slid over a verification packet Patel had prepared through official channels. The name on my father line was Samuel Raines. The partners knew the name. The association staff member went still. Kyle looked confused for the first time. Patel explained that the identity link had been confirmed and that counsel for Raines had already contacted her office to coordinate next steps. The room went quiet. The bank representative stood up, said the credit facility was paused effective immediately pending review, and asked Kyle to stop any new commitments. In the ballroom outside, I could still hear Trent starting another cheerful speech, but inside the private room, Kyle's pen stayed frozen above the paper.